Because there seems to be a lot of confusion and definitely delusion in the conversation surrounding privilege, I thought I would make a visual aid. So first off, let's define privilege for the sake of this video. I'm going to say its advantages that some people have and others do not. I'm not going to get into the nuance of racial privilege, pretty privilege, generational wealth, anything like that for now. I want to improve the general and broad conversation surrounding privilege, so I'm going to use a general and broad definition of privilege for now. So let's start with an equation and we'll work backwards. Results are the sum of our efforts, our advantages, and the alignment of circumstances, which I call luck. So first off, I'm going to leave off luck because those are external circumstances that are harder to identify. So results equal our efforts plus our advantages. So if we're trying to identify our privilege and our advantages, then we need to subtract efforts from both sides, which means that results minus efforts equals advantages. Perfect! Now let's jump into our graph. So we've got a Cartesian plane here, and for our y-axis, we've got results, and our x-axis, we are going to do efforts. Now let's lay down the star of the show, which is the privilege line. Ah, yes, there it is. You see, in a perfect world, we all would walk this line and never stray, where simply one effort unit equals one result unit, and 3 effort units equals 3 result units. But life is never that simple. It's never like commerce, where it's a $1 item for $1 of monetary value. Usually there are other things at play. So let's try and identify that. Well, what does this line mean? It means that if you land anywhere on this side of the grid, you, my friend, are the proud owner and recipient of some sort of privilege, some advantage. Because if you are enjoying a quality of life at 5 result units, but you only put in 1 effort unit, well, the rest of that value is coming from somewhere else. Some advantage that took your efforts further, some unseen benefactor, whatever it might be. Now, there's a quick clarifier that I need to make, because obviously a lot of us line on this side of the grid. We are privileged. There is nothing inherently wrong with privilege for 2 reasons. We want people to have a better quality of life. We don't want people to have to give a Herculean effort to achieve just a base quality of life and a standard of living. No. And second is that life ebbs and flows. We all have inclinations to help people, to be charitable, and we all will go through times when we ourselves need help, when the quality of living for us is suffering and we need someone else to help us get out of a rut and extend a helping hand. So we can't inherently demonize privilege, but the problem with privilege comes from when people are on this side of the line who lack the self-awareness and refuse to acknowledge that anything other than their own efforts is what constitutes the results that they are enjoying. Because remember, results is the sum of efforts and advantages. So when a person only wants to pretend as though their efforts were the direct result, well, then that's what gets frustrating, because as many people as there are on this side of the line, there are an equal amount of people on this side of the line who are dealing with disadvantages and bad luck. And they do not like to deal with those issues, those things that are unique to them, and see that the people on the winning side of life are not acknowledging the advantages and the head starts that they were given in their life. But you can understand why people get defensive. We have a really bad habit of perceiving results as a singular thing, and we are not very good at dissecting the other layers that helped lead to those results. A lot of times people will observe the results that they are enjoying and immediately use this line as a grading chart to say, oh, well then I must have given an equal and commensurate amount of effort to deserve that. They don't like to acknowledge that there are other forces that contribute to their success. And why would they? Because in this modern day, so much of our own personal value and identity is wrapped up in the value and efforts and the results that we get from life. So a lot of times people get defensive because they see you acknowledging that other people have helped them as belittling their own efforts. So they get defensive. But it's delusional, and it lacks self-awareness to refuse to acknowledge the ways that you've been given an advantage and a head start forward. One quick example of this would be, let's say I'm a merchant selling apples at a market. Well, if I'm a really good salesman and the quality of the apples I have is really delicious, over the course of 1 hour, I sell 100 apples. And then I look across the market and I see my buddy, and he's also selling apples. But I know for a fact that his apples are rotten, and I know that he's not a very good salesman, but boy, oh boy, is this a specimen of a man. He is very nice to look at. And I find out that in the same course of 1 hour, he sold 200 apples. Well, I can see that my efforts and the value that I contributed in the ways that I could, which was the quality of the goods and the quality of my service, was high. But he doubled my results because he was a good-looking person, because he delivered on an advantage that was unique to him and not to me. Well, that's a tough conversation to have. It's a hard pill to swallow for him if I were to confront him and say, well, it's because you're so good looking. He might see that as me being spiteful. And if he thinks that his results were directly commensurate with his own efforts, he might flip the script on me and look at the results I achieved and say, well, it's because you didn't try hard enough. You didn't want it badly enough. One more key point that I want to make, though, is there's a big difference between the mindset that you employ against the genuine awareness that you have of life and of reality. Because I can understand tweaking your mindset for the sake of motivation, where I could say $100,000 isn't a lot of money, and I do this so that I can make it seem like it's an attainable goal and I can work hard towards it. But if I don't pair that mindset with a realistic view of life and reality and an understanding of what things actually are, well, that's delusion. Confidence unchecked by reality equals delusion. I could go in so much deeper about all of this, ways that we can improve our self-awareness so that we're not delusional about the advantages that we do have, ways that we can recognize other people's disadvantages so that we can reach out a helping hand. But for now, I'm going to leave it at this. I hope the representation was somewhat helpful to crack into this conversation.